Jax's reputation as one of the galaxy's most skilled and ruthless mercenaries had preceded him, earning him the attention of a shadowy organization known as Nexus Enterprises. Their representative, a sharp-eyed woman named Vera, approached Jax in a dimly lit cantina on the outer rim planet of Tarkus, offering him a mission that would make him a very wealthy man. The target is a brilliant scientist named Dr. Emily Sinclair, Vera said, sliding a datapad across the table. She's been conducting research at a highly secure facility on Arcadia Prime. Our client wants her extracted, alive and unharmed. Jax studied the information on the datapad, his brow furrowing as he reviewed the details of the facility's formidable defenses. This won't be easy, he warned, taking a sip of his Alderanian whiskey. Arcadia Prime is one of the most heavily fortified research outposts in the sector. Vera leaned in, her expression unwavering. Name your price. Jax. Credits are no object for our client. The mercenary mulled it over, weighing the risks and rewards. It was an enticing offer, the kind of payday that could set him up for life. And yet something about the mission felt off. Why does your client want this scientist so badly? He asked. Vera's eyes narrowed. That's not your concern. Can you do the job or not? Jax's gaze drifted to the shadowy corners of the cantina, his instincts telling him there was more to this than met the eye. But the promise of wealth was a powerful draw, one that he'd been chasing for years in an attempt to outrun the ghosts of his past. I'll need to assemble a team, he said finally. The best of the best. This won't be a solo operation. Done, Vera replied, a thin smile spreading across her lips. I'll have the details sent to you immediately. You have 48 hours to get your team in place. With that, she rose from the table and disappeared into the crowd, leaving Jax alone with his thoughts and a mounting sense of unease. Over the next 2 days, Jax handpicked a team of elite operatives, each with their own unique set of skills. There was Riven, a former Galactic Marine with a sharpshooting reputation that was second to none. Kira, a tech specialist who could hack any system in the galaxy. And Zephyr, a master of stealth and infiltration, whose ability to slip through the tightest security was legendary. As they gathered in a secure safe house on the edge of the Arcadian system, Jax briefed them on the mission. We're going in fast and quiet, he said, his voice low and focused. The target is a scientist named Dr. Emily Sinclair, being held at a research facility on Arcadia Prime. Our objective is to extract her, alive and unharmed. Riven's brow furrowed. Why the heavy security then? This doesn't sound like a simple snatch and grab. Jax shook his head. I don't know, but I've got a bad feeling about this. Stay sharp, all of you. This job is going to require precision and discipline. He paused, his gaze sweeping over the assembled team. If anyone wants out, now's the time to say so. The team exchanged glances, but no one spoke up. They were all seasoned veterans, hardened by years of dangerous missions. They knew the risks, but the prospect of a substantial payday was too tempting to pass up. All right, Jax said, activating the holoprojector in the center of the room. A detailed schematic of the Arcadia Prime facility flickered to life, its formidable defenses and security measures laid bare. Here's the plan. As Jax outlined the infiltration strategy, his mind raced with questions. Who was this Dr. Sinclair, and why was she being held at such a heavily guarded facility? What secrets was she privy to, and why was Nexus Enterprises so desperate to extract her? The mercenary in him knew better than to ask too many questions, but the nagging sense of unease refused to subside. One thing was certain, this mission was going to be a challenge, even for a team as capable as his. And if his instincts were right, the real danger might not lie in breaching the facility's defenses, but in what they discovered once they reached their target. As the team finalized their preparations, Jax found himself consumed by an internal battle. The mercenary instincts that had served him so well over the years were at odds with a growing sense of moral obligation, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. He pored over the intelligence again, searching for any clue that might shed light on Dr. Sinclair's captivity. The data painted a picture of a brilliant scientist, respected in her field and known for her groundbreaking work in renewable energy technology. Yet she was being held against her will, her research and expertise no doubt being exploited for sinister purposes. "This isn't right," Jax muttered to himself, running a calloused hand through his short, graying hair. The prospect of a substantial payday no longer held the same allure. The mission felt increasingly tainted, a stain on his already dubious reputation. Riven, the team's sharpshooter, approached Jax, his brow furrowed with concern. "You seem distracted, boss. Something on your mind?" Jax hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. "I'm just trying to get a read on this job, that's all. There's more going on here than Nexus is letting on." "That's nothing new," Riven replied with a shrug. "When are these corporate types ever upfront about their real motivations? As long as the credits keep flowing, does it really matter?" The mercenary considered his teammates' words, but found little solace in them. "It matters to me," he said quietly. "I've done a lot of things in my life that I'm not proud of. I don't want this to be one of them." Riven studied Jax for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I trust your judgment, Jax. If you think there's something off about this, then I'm with you. We'll watch each other's backs, no matter what." Jax felt a surge of gratitude, knowing that he could count on his team to have his back, even if it meant defying their employers. But the weight of the decision still weighed heavily on him. Could he really justify jeopardizing the mission and the substantial reward that came with it, based on little more than a gut feeling? As the team prepared to depart, Jax pulled Kira, the team's tech specialist, aside. "I need you to do something for me before we hit the facility," he murmured. Kira's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded without hesitation. "What do you need?" "I want you to dig deeper into Dr. Sinclair's background and see what you can uncover about her captivity. I have a feeling there's more to this than we're being told." "Understood," Kira replied, her nimble fingers already tapping away at her datavad. "I'll see what I can find. Just be sure to keep me covered when we're inside." Jax nodded, his expression grim. "That's a promise." The team made their way to the planet Arcadia Prime, their shuttle gliding silently through the darkness of space. As they approached the heavily fortified research facility, Jax felt a tightness in his chest, a growing sense of unease that he couldn't shake. "We're in range of the facility's defenses," Zephyr reported, her voice hushed. "Initiating stealth protocols now." Jax took a deep breath, steeling himself for the task ahead. "Remember, team, speed and precision. We get in, extract the target, and get out. No unnecessary risks." The others nodded, their faces set with determination. Jax knew they were all seasoned professionals, capable of navigating even the most treacherous of missions. But this job felt different, somehow, a weight that pressed down on him with each passing moment. As the shuttle touched down on the facility's landing pad, Jax couldn't shake the nagging feeling that they were walking straight into a trap. But there was no turning back now. The die had been cast, and all they could do was trust in their skills and each other to see this through. "Let's move," Jax said, his voice low and steady. "Remember, we're only here for one thing. Dr. Emily Sinclair. Stay focused and stay alive." With that, the team moved out, their footsteps silent as they disappeared into the shadows, bound for a confrontation that would test the limits of their abilities and their moral convictions. The team's infiltration of the Arcadia Prime research facility was a masterclass in precision and execution. Zephyr, the stealthy infiltrator, led the way, her nimble movements and keen senses guiding the group through the complex's labyrinthine corridors. Kira, the tech specialist, hacked into the security systems, diverting attention and disabling alarms with her exceptional skills. Jax and Riven, the sharpshooter, covered their flank, their weapons at the ready should they encounter any resistance. The plan was unfolding seamlessly, and Jax felt a glimmer of hope that they might be able to extract Dr. Sinclair without incident. But as they approached the secured wing where the scientist was being held, their luck took a turn for the worse. A squad of heavily armed security guards emerged from a side corridor, their weapons trained on the intruders. "Freeze!" one of the guards shouted, his finger tightening on the trigger. Jax reacted instantly, his blaster rifle roaring to life. Beside him, Riven opened fire, his shots finding their mark with deadly accuracy. The other team members joined the fray, their own weapons blazing as they fought to push through the barrage of fire. In the chaos, Jax caught a glimpse of Dr. Sinclair, her eyes wide with fear as she peered out from behind a security console. She was trapped, unable to reach the extraction point that Zephyr had secured. Knowing they couldn't leave her behind, Jax barked an order to Kira. "Get her out of there. We'll hold them off." Kira nodded, her fingers flying across her datapad as she hacked the security systems. Within moments, a path opened up, and she gestured frantically to the scientist. "Dr. Sinclair. This way, hurry." The doctor hesitated, her gaze darting between Kira and the raging firefight. Jax caught her eye, his expression intense. "Go now. We'll cover you." Sinclair nodded, her auburn hair whipping around her face as she sprinted across the open space, Kira guiding her to safety. But as the scientist reached the extraction point, a blast from one of the security guard's weapons caught Jax in the shoulder, sending him reeling. He stumbled, his rifle clattering to the floor, and for a moment, it seemed as if the mission was about to unravel. Riven, seeing his teammates' plight, shifted his focus, laying down a barrage of covering fire that allowed Kira and Sinclair to escape to the waiting shuttle. Zephyr, ever the master of stealth, slipped behind the guards, neutralizing them one by one with a series of precise strikes. Jax, gritting his teeth against the searing pain in his shoulder, retrieved his weapon and rejoined the fight, his movements slowed but his aim still true. The team fought with a renewed sense of urgency, determined to extract themselves and their target from the facility. As the last of the security forces were neutralized, Jax led the way to the shuttle, his eyes scanning the area for any sign of further pursuit. Sinclair was already aboard, her face a mask of concern as she tended to his wounded shoulder. "Why did you do that?" she asked, her voice tinged with a mixture of gratitude and bewilderment. "You risked your life to save me." Jax grimaced, the adrenaline beginning to wear off. "It's my job," he replied, his tone gruff. "Now let's get out of here before more of those goons show up." The team piled into the shuttle, its engines roaring to life as they lifted off, the research facility growing smaller in the distance. Jax settled into his seat, his mind racing with questions. Why had he put his own life on the line to protect Dr. Sinclair? Was it simply a matter of professional pride, or had something deeper stirred within him? As the shuttle hurtled through the blackness of space, Jax found himself drawn to the scientist, her compassionate gaze and unwavering determination intriguing him in a way he hadn't experienced in a long time. And in that moment, he knew that this mission had become more than just a simple extraction. It had become a test of his own moral compass, one that would ultimately determine the course of his future. The shuttle rocketed through the void of space, its occupants tense and alert. Jax, his wounded shoulder throbbing, studied Dr. Sinclair as she tended to his injury. There was a gentleness in her movements, a calm resolve that belied the harrowing ordeal she had just endured. "Why did you come back for me?" she asked, her voice soft but tinged with curiosity. Jax winced as she applied a medipatch to the laser burn. "I couldn't just leave you there," he replied, his gruff tone betraying a hint of uncertainty. Sinclair regarded him for a moment, her keen intellect clearly at work. "You're not like the others, are you?" The mercenary remained silent, unsure of how to respond. In truth, he wasn't even sure of the answer himself. Everything about this mission had felt off from the beginning, and his decision to risk his life to save the scientist had been a split-second one, driven by an impulse he couldn't fully explain. As the shuttle reached a safe distance from the Arcadia Prime facility, Jax activated the long-range communications. "Kira, what's our status?" The tech specialist's voice crackled over the comm. "We lost the pursuit, but we've got company on our tail. Looks like a pair of Nexus Enterprises security ships." Jax cursed under his breath. Of course, Vera and her employers wouldn't let them escape that easily. "Can you lose them?" "I'm working on it," Kira replied, her fingers flying across her console. "But they're good, Jax. Real good. I don't know how long I can keep this up." The mercenary turned to Zephyr, the team's infiltration specialist. "Can you buy us some time?" Zephyr nodded, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Consider it done." Without another word, she vanished into the rear of the shuttle, her movements as silent and deadly as a shadow. Jax returned his attention to Dr. Sinclair, who was watching the exchange with a mixture of trepidation and fascination. "You should strap in," he said gruffly. "This is going to get bumpy." Sinclair hesitated for a moment, then nodded and secured herself in one of the seats. Jax could see the concern in her eyes, but there was also a glimmer of something else, a spark of determination that intrigued him. The shuttle rocked as Zephyr's diversionary tactics drew the attention of the pursuing ships. Kira's fingers danced across her console, her brow furrowed in concentration as she fought to evade their pursuers. "Hang on," she called out, just as the shuttle lurched into a dizzying, evasive maneuver. Jax braced himself, his teeth gritted against the pain in his shoulder. He could feel the G-forces pressing down on him, but his focus remained unwavering. They had to make it out of this alive, for their own sake, and for the sake of the woman they had risked everything to save. In the chaos, Jax caught a glimpse of Dr. Sinclair, her face pale but her eyes locked on the viewport, as if she were willing the shuttle to outrun their pursuers. He was struck by the contrast between her delicate features and the steely resolve that seemed to emanate from her. Just as Jax was beginning to lose hope, Kira's voice rang out triumphantly. "I've got them. We're clear." The shuttle surged forward, the Nexus Enterprises ships falling behind in the distance. Jax let out a long, slow breath, the adrenaline slowly ebbing from his system. "Where are we headed?" Sinclair asked, her voice steady despite the ordeal they had just endured. Jax turned to face her, his expression serious. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere they won't find us." The scientist nodded, her gaze searching his face. "And then what?" The mercenary hesitated, unsure of the answer himself. Everything had changed the moment he had chosen to risk his life to save her. The promise of the hefty payday no longer held the same allure, and the thought of handing her over to Nexus Enterprises filled him with a growing sense of unease. "Then," he said, his voice low, "we figure out why they wanted you so badly." Sinclair's eyes widened slightly, and Jax could see the gears turning in her mind. Whatever secret she was harboring, it was clear that the fate of the galaxy might very well hinge on unraveling them. As the shuttle hurtled towards its destination, Jax couldn't help but feel a strange sense of purpose, a purpose that had nothing to do with credits or the mercenary's code he had lived by for so long. For the first time in years, he felt truly alive, driven by a force greater than his own self-interest. And in that moment, he knew that his life would never be the same again. As the shuttle touched down on a remote asteroid-based outpost, Jax could see the tension written across his team's faces. They had successfully extracted Dr. Sinclair from the Arcadia Prime facility, but the price they had paid was high. Jax's injury, the loss of their original extraction plan, and the pursuit by Nexus Enterprises security forces. Zephyr was the first to speak up, her voice laced with concern. "Jax, we need to talk. This mission just got a lot more complicated." The mercenary nodded, his gaze shifting to Dr. Sinclair, who stood quietly by his side. "I know. We need to figure out our next move, and quickly. Nexus isn't going to stop hunting us until they get what they want." Riven, the team's sharpshooter, folded his arms across his chest, his brow furrowed. "So, what's the plan? Do we hand the good doctor over and take our cut? Or do we dig in and fight?" Jax's jaw tightened as he considered the options, Handing Sinclair over to Nexus Enterprises would be the safest path, the one that would ensure their payday and allow them to move on to the next job. But the thought of betraying the scientist after risking so much to save her left a bitter taste in his mouth. "We don't turn her over," he said firmly. "Not after what we've been through." Riven's eyes widened, and Kira's mouth fell open in surprise. "You can't be serious, Jax," the tech specialist protested. "That's a lot of credits we'd be walking away from." "I'm dead serious," Jax replied, his voice brooking no argument. "This isn't just about the money anymore. There's something bigger at play here, and I intend to find out what it is." Zephyr studied him for a long moment, her keen gaze assessing the situation. "So, we're going rogue," she said simply, "defying our employers and risking everything to protect the target. That's a bold move, even for you." Jax met her steady stare, his own resolve unwavering. "I know what I'm asking, but I need you all to trust me on this. There's more at stake here than any of us could have imagined." The team exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of Jax's decision settling heavily upon them. They were seasoned veterans, hardened by years of dangerous missions, but this was uncharted territory, a moral quandary that challenged the very foundations of their mercenary existence. Dr. Sinclair, who had remained silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke up, her voice soft but determined. "If you're willing to risk everything to protect me, then the least I can do is help you understand what's really going on." All eyes turned to the scientist, and Jax gestured for her to continue, his expression expectant. "Nexus Enterprises isn't just a corporation," Sinclair explained, her brow furrowed with concern. "They're a front for a shadowy organization, one that's been manipulating governments, corporations, and even the black market for their own sinister purposes, and they've been after my research for a very long time." Kira's eyes widened as the pieces began to fall into place. "Your work on renewable energy technology," she murmured. "They want to control it, don't they?" Sinclair nodded gravely. "Exactly. My research has the potential to disrupt the entire energy sector, and Nexus wants to exploit it for their own gain. They'll stop at nothing to get their hands on it." Jax felt a chill run down his spine. If what Sinclair was saying was true, then their mission had just become a matter of galactic importance. The fate of countless worlds could hinge on their ability to protect the scientist and uncover the truth behind Nexus Enterprises' machinations. "All right, team," he said, his voice low and resolute. "We're in this for the long haul. No more half measures. From this moment on, we're on the run. From Nexus, from the authorities, from anyone who wants to get their hands on Dr. Sinclair and her research. Are you with me?" One by one, his team members nodded, their expressions grim but determined. They knew the risks, but the promise of uncovering a conspiracy of this magnitude was too alluring to ignore. As the shuttle's engines roared to life, Jax turned to Sinclair, his eyes burning with a newfound purpose. "Doctor, you and I are about to go on the ride of our lives. I hope you're ready." Sinclair met his gaze, a faint smile playing on her lips. "I've been ready for a long time. Jax, let's do this." With that, the shuttle lifted off, its occupants bracing themselves for the challenges that lay ahead, a test of their skills, their loyalties, and the very limits of their moral convictions. As the shuttle hurtled through the blackness of space, Jax could feel the tension palpable within the cabin. His team, once united by the promise of a lucrative payday, now found themselves in uncharted territory, fugitives on the run, their fate intertwined with the brilliant scientist they had risked everything to protect. Beside him, Dr. Sinclair sat in contemplative silence, her keen mind no doubt processing the gravity of their situation. Jax couldn't help but admire her composure, a stark contrast to the fear and panic that had gripped her during the initial extraction. "Where are we headed?" she asked, breaking the silence. Jax glanced at the navigation display, his brow furrowed in concentration. "A remote research outpost on the edge of the outer rim. It's off the grid, and we should be able to lay low there for a while." Sinclair nodded, her gaze drifting to the viewports as the stars streaked by. And then what? How do we stop Nexus Enterprises? The mercenary let out a heavy sigh, his wounded shoulder throbbing with each movement. I wish I knew. All I know is that they won't stop hunting us until they get what they want. Your research and whatever secrets you're carrying. You're right, Sinclair replied, her voice tinged with a hint of resignation. Nexus has been after me for years, ever since I started working on this renewable energy technology. They'll stop at nothing to keep it out of the public's hands. Jax's brow furrowed as the pieces began to fall into place. What exactly are you working on, Doctor? What makes your research so valuable to them? Sinclair met his gaze, her eyes reflecting a mixture of fear and determination. It's not just about renewable energy, Jax. My work has the potential to disrupt the entire power structure of the galaxy, to free worlds from the stranglehold of fossil fuels and the corporations that control them. The mercenary felt a chill run down his spine. If what Sinclair was saying was true, then the stakes were far higher than he could have ever imagined. You're talking about a revolution, he breathed, his voice laced with a mixture of awe and trepidation. Sinclair nodded solemnly. Exactly. And Nexus Enterprises will do anything to keep that from happening. They've been manipulating governments, corporations, and even the black market to maintain their grip on power. And they see me as a threat to that power. Jax's mind raced, the gravity of their situation becoming increasingly clear. So, we're not just running from a corporation, he murmured, his gaze sweeping across the faces of his team. We're running from an entire system that's rigged against us. Kira, the tech specialist, leaned forward, her eyes narrowed with determination. Then we need to expose them, Jax. Blow the lid off this whole operation and show the galaxy what they're really up to. Riven, the sharpshooter, nodded in agreement, his weathered features set in a grim expression. And we'll need allies. People who are willing to fight back against Nexus and their cronies. Zephyr, the infiltration expert, remained silent, her eyes hooded as she contemplated the task before them. But Jax could see the resolve in her posture, the readiness to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Turning to Sinclair, Jax felt a renewed sense of purpose, a calling that transcended the mercenary's code he had lived by for so long. Doctor, you've got yourself a team. We'll do whatever it takes to stop Nexus Enterprises and protect your research. Sinclair's eyes widened, and for a moment, Jax caught a glimpse of the weight she had been carrying, the burden of a crusade that had consumed her for years. Thank you, Jax. I know this isn't what you signed up for, but I'm grateful to have your help. The mercenary offered her a faint smile, his own sense of purpose solidifying with each passing moment. We're in this together, Doctor. No turning back now. As the shuttle hurtled towards their destination, Jax couldn't help but feel a surge of adrenaline coursing through his veins. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and peril. But for the first time in years, he felt truly alive, driven by a cause greater than his own self-interest, bound by a sense of honor and duty that had long been dormant within him. The hunt was on, and Nexus Enterprises would soon discover that they had made a grave mistake in underestimating the resolve of Jax and his team. The remote research outpost on the edge of the Outer Rim proved to be a safe haven for Jax, his team, and their unexpected charge, Dr. Emily Sinclair. As they settled in, the mercenary couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. They were now firmly entrenched in a conflict that reached far beyond their usual sphere of operations. Sinclair, sensing Jax's apprehension, approached him in the makeshift command center. I know this isn't what you signed up for, she said quietly, but I want you to know how grateful I am for your help. Jax regarded the scientist with a weary expression. You don't have to thank me, Doctor. We're in this together now, whether I like it or not. Sinclair nodded, her gaze searching his face. Then I hope you're ready to take the fight to Nexus Enterprises, because that's exactly what we're going to do. The mercenary let out a heavy sigh, running a calloused hand through his graying hair. I'm listening. Sinclair gestured to the holographic display, which came to life with a dizzying array of information. Nexus Enterprises is a well-oiled machine, with tentacles reaching into every corner of the galaxy. They've been manipulating governments, corporations, and even criminal syndicates to maintain their stranglehold on power. Jax's brow furrowed as he studied the data. So how do we take them down? We're just a small team of mercenaries up against a galactic-scale organization. That's where you're wrong, Sinclair replied, a spark of determination in her eyes. We're not alone in this fight. There are others out there, people and groups who have been working to uncover the truth about Nexus and their schemes. Zephyr, who had been observing the exchange, stepped forward. You've made contact with them, haven't you? Sinclair nodded. Yes, a network of rebel scientists, activists, and even some sympathetic government officials. They're willing to help us infiltrate Nexus Enterprises and expose their corruption. Kira, the tech specialist, leaned in, her fingers tapping away at her datapad. I can work on establishing a secure communication link with them. We'll need to be careful, though. Nexus has eyes and ears everywhere. Jax considered the plan, his mind racing with the implications. If we pull this off, we could bring down an entire galactic power structure. Are you sure we're ready for that kind of responsibility? Riven, the sharpshooter, let out a bark of laughter. Since when have we ever backed down from a challenge, Jax? This is our chance to make a real difference, to fight for something bigger than ourselves. Jax met the eyes of his team, seeing the same determination reflected in each of their faces. They had come a long way from the mercenaries who had been drawn to the promise of a hefty payday. Now they were bound by a sense of purpose, a desire to right the wrongs that had been perpetuated by Nexus Enterprises. All right. Then Jax said, his voice resolute. Let's do this. We'll need to work closely with your contacts, Doctor, and make sure we have a solid plan of attack. Sinclair nodded, a faint smile playing on her lips. I'll have Kira set up the link. In the meantime, I'll brief you on everything I know about Nexus Enterprises and their operations. As the team gathered around the holographic display, Jax felt a familiar sense of purpose coursing through his veins. The stakes had never been higher, and the risks were greater than anything they had faced before. But for the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of hope, a chance to not only protect the woman they had sworn to defend, but to reshape the very fabric of the galaxy. In the days that followed, Jax and his team worked tirelessly, collaborating with Sinclair's contacts to uncover the depths of Nexus Enterprises' corruption. They pored over intelligence reports, analyzed financial records, and mapped out the intricate web of alliances and dependencies that the corporation had woven across the galaxy. As the plan began to take shape, Jax couldn't help but feel a sense of trepidation. They were about to challenge a power structure that had been in place for generations, and the consequences of failure were unthinkable. But with Sinclair's unwavering determination and the loyalty of his team, he knew that they had a fighting chance. The final pieces were falling into place, and the time had come to strike. Jax took a deep breath, steeling himself for the confrontation that lay ahead. This was their moment, their chance to make a difference, and they would stop at nothing to bring Nexus Enterprises to its knees. The plan was audacious, bordering on reckless, but Jax and his team had spent weeks meticulously plotting their infiltration of Nexus Enterprises headquarters. With the intel and support provided by Sinclair's rebel contacts, they were as prepared as they could be to take the fight directly to the heart of the organization. As the team made their final preparations, Jax couldn't help but feel a twinge of unease. This was no longer just a simple extraction mission. They were about to engage in a high-stakes gambit that could reshape the very fabric of the galaxy. The stakes had never been higher, and the consequences of failure were unthinkable. You sure about this, Jax? Riven asked, his weathered features etched with concern. We're talking about taking on the biggest corporate powerhouse in the galaxy. It's not too late to back out. Jax considered his teammates' words, his gaze drifting to where Dr. Sinclair stood, her expression resolute. "We've come too far to turn back now, Riven," he replied, his voice steady. "Besides, I made a promise to the doctor, and I intend to keep it." Riven nodded, the ghost of a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Well, you know I've got your back, no matter what. We all do." Zephyr and Kira chimed in with their own affirmations, their determination unwavering. Jax felt a swell of pride and gratitude for his team. These were seasoned mercenaries, hardened by years of dangerous missions, but they had chosen to stand by him and Sinclair, driven by a cause greater than their own self-interest. As the team made their final preparations, Sinclair approached Jax, her eyes shining with a mixture of apprehension and hope. "Are you sure you're ready for this, Jax? The risks are unimaginable." Jax reached out, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I've never been more ready, Doctor. We're in this together, remember?" Sinclair nodded, a faint smile gracing her features. "Then let's do this. For the future of the galaxy." With that, the team made their move, infiltrating Nexus Enterprise's heavily fortified headquarters with a precision and stealth that belied the gravity of their mission. Zephyr led the way, her movements silent and deadly, as she dispatched security guards and hacked through the corporation's defenses. Kira, her fingers flying across her datapad, fed the team a constant stream of intel, guiding them towards their ultimate target, the executive boardroom, where the shadowy leaders of Nexus Enterprises were holding court. As they approached the inner sanctum, Jax felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through his veins. This was it, the moment of reckoning, where they would confront the architects of the galaxy's corruption and expose their sinister plans. The doors to the boardroom slid open, and the team surged inside, their weapons at the ready. The Nexus Enterprises executives, caught off guard, scrambled for cover, their expressions a mixture of fear and disbelief. At the head of the table, a tall, imposing figure rose to his feet, his eyes narrowing as he recognized Sinclair. "Dr. Sinclair, I should have known you'd be behind this little uprising." Sinclair stepped forward, her chin held high. "It's over, Alistair. Your reign of corruption ends today." Alistair let out a dry chuckle, his gaze sweeping across the team. "You really think a handful of mercenaries and rebels can bring down Nexus Enterprises? You're more delusional than I thought." Jax leveled his blaster at the executive, his finger tightening on the trigger. "We're not just mercenaries, Alistair. We're the ones who are going to take you and your entire organization down." The Nexus Enterprises executives exchanged panicked glances, realizing the gravity of the situation. Alistair, his composure fracturing, turned to his security detail. "Kill them. All of them." The boardroom erupted into chaos as the security forces opened fire, but Jax and his team were ready. Riven's blaster bolts found their mark with deadly precision, while Zephyr and Kira maneuvered through the hail of fire, disabling systems and neutralizing threats. In the midst of the battle, Jax caught Sinclair's eye, and in that moment, he knew that they were on the precipice of something greater than either of them could have imagined. This wasn't just about protecting the scientist and her research. It was about shattering the very foundations of the corrupt system that had held the galaxy in its grip for far too long. As the last of the Nexus Enterprises security forces fell, Alistair made a desperate attempt to flee, but Jax was faster. With a well-placed shot, the executive crumpled to the ground, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and defiance. Sinclair approached Jax, her expression a mixture of relief and resolve. "It's over," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But the real work is just beginning." Jax nodded, his gaze sweeping across the devastated boardroom. "Then let's get to it, Doctor. The galaxy is waiting." With that, the team moved out, their footsteps echoing through the halls of the fallen Nexus Enterprises empire. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: Jax and his team were no longer just mercenaries. They were the harbingers of a new age, forged in the fires of their struggle against corruption and injustice.